That was a Molotov cocktail being thrown into riot police in Ukraine and setting several of them on fire. Around 100,000 demonstrators had gathered in Independence Square, and some of them tried to make their way to Parliament, but were blocked off by the police. This protest was specifically against a new law restricting public demonstrations, but the source of the unrest goes back several weeks, even months. So let's rewind. It all comes down to two trade agreements. In November, President Yanukovych decided to pull out of an agreement with the EU in favor of signing the Eurasian Customs Union agreement with Russia, Kazakhstan and Belarus. The Russian deal offered cheaper gas, a major purchase of Ukrainian government bonds and no trade wars. The European deal was, in the short term at least, seen as not as attractive to the president, who is presiding over a failing economy and mounting debt payments. But the problem is that many think in the long term the EU deal would be better for Ukraine, and that's the main reason the protests have continued. The protesters have joined the main opposition leaders, Arseniy Yatsenyuk, who's a close ally of former Prime Minister Yulia Tymoshenko, who's now in jail, and Vitaly Klitschko, the former world heavyweight boxing champion. Klitschko's the leader of the Udar or Punch movement and is planning on running for president in 2015 if elections aren't called sooner. There's also a division between different regions of the country, with the president's support coming mainly from the south and east. In those areas, there's a stronger backing for ties with Russia, and there have been protests in support of the government. But in the areas around Kiev and the west, there's a much greater affinity with Europe. That's why when Kiev's statue of Lenin was pulled down in December last year, there were extreme reactions of support and condemnation around the country. While all of this is going on, there's an international struggle as well. The EU says the door is still open for Ukraine to sign its agreement instead of the one with Russia. The US has said that it's considering sanctions against Ukraine's leaders. And Russia is able to do similar things. To put pressure on Ukraine when it was considering the EU deal, there were bans on the import of Ukrainian sweets and strict border controls brought in as a way of inconveniencing people coming across the border. A spokesman for the Interior Ministry blamed provocateurs and extremists for the violence, and opposition leaders have called on their supporters to remain calm. But ultimately, Vitaly Klitschko is demanding a new election, and unless the people get to vote, there's every chance the protesters won't be calmed.